I'd just like to start off this momentous occasion by saying the mantra of my people. It's 3:22 p.m. Saturday, October 21st, and OU still sucks.
Fuck Oklahoma. Fuck Oklahoma. Fuck them. I hate them. I wish that entire state
I
was
also
just.
don't like them.
I wish that entire state was Indian territory, as we promised them, and then
you know why, Chris? You know why Oklahoma doesn't float off into the Gulf, right? Or why Texas doesn't float? Why Texas doesn't float off into the Gulf, right?
I would love to hear it.
It's because Oklahoma sucks.
Oh, there we go. That's good. That's good.
You know what, though? Also, now, Jake, you know I'm an Iowa State fan.
Yeah,
I hate you guys, too. I hate you guys so much. I hate you guys. You tried to destroy our conference. I hate you.
I'm putting my Don Draper face on right now. We don't think about you at all.
You do when it's November in Ames.
We always fucking lose to y'all. I fucking hate it.
Yeah,
the last 5 years,
goddamn right you do.
They've had our number.
Well, this has been the fruitless sports corner real quick before we start the book club.
One more quick sports corner. One more quick sports corner. That San Diego logo sucks ass.
It's so bad. It literally looks like someone made it
terrible.
On like Baby's First Lightroom or some shit.
What
were you sharing those in the? Was that in the Fruitless Discord? You were sharing those?
Yes,
man. Those looked pretty bad. You're right.
God, they're so bad.
It's literally like you got an ultimate team card on FIFA 05 or some shit.
Yes. Yes.
It's so bad.
Oh,
it's so bad. Those San Diego logos are so shit.
I need to get a soundboard when I have a little bit of money, and I'm gonna have a little like music thing that's like the Fruitless Sports Corner whenever you guys go on this. While I sit kind of nodding, pretending I know what's going on. I'm like,
buddy, I'm gonna get you there. Okay, I'm gonna get you there. We are gonna like.
There's only so many things you need to know.
If people subscribe to the Patreon, I'll like sports. But this is of course a book club. And we're talking about for this episode, we're talking about late Victorian Holocausts. And to start us off, I am going to read, I think, one of the greatest little sentences at the end of, what is it? At like this early introduction, a note on definitions as a kind of a look into how this is going to go, how this conversation is going to go. He goes, "It is the burden of this book to show that imperial policies towards starving subjects were often the exact moral equivalents of bombs dropped from 18,000 feet. The contemporary photographs used in this book are thus intended as accusations, not illustrations." Welcome to the Fruitless Book Club. You are listening to the Fruitless Book Club, a podcast within a podcast where we read all those nonfiction books we've been meaning to read. This is episode 2, Late Victorian Holocausts, where we discuss Mike Davis's seminal work about colonialism, famine, and the making of the Third World.
Like, I'm doing it right now. Yeah. The like awkward laugh.
Yeah, you know what? That's probably. Oh, good.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's actually weird. My copy is just full of pictures of Oklahoma.
Oh no, yeah, I think that's a good thing to say, Chris, is like, yeah, the awkward laugh is like, it's not that we're making light of anything than this, it's that it's so awful and so just like seemingly just kind of pushed out of the historical record, you know, at least up until Davis wrote this in like the early 2000s, so I think it started to change, but like, it's just, I don't know, you just have to like laugh at how evil the people involved in this are. So real quick, I'm going to say, welcome to the Fruitless Book Club, the second ever book club. So that's super exciting. And we are joined today by, the book club is growing. Chimera was not here for this one. She might join us next one. But we do have me, of course, Josiah Sutton, and I am joined by Chris Barker, who was here last time.
They can't see me doing this thing. Sorry.
No, they can't. And then Jake the lawyer.
Hello, everyone.
Jake the resolutely handsome.
Jake the resolutely handsome.
We can. That sounds like a GIF-cat link.
I think we should have that. You know, like, you're not
URL.
Jake the lawyer. You are Jake the resolutely handsome.
Yes.
But yes, I am. I'm Jake, and I am a lawyer, and I'm happy to be part of this adventure. This extremely depressing adventure.
We've joked about Jake being the in-house lawyer for Mammonburg for a while on the Discord, but now he's also the in-house lawyer for Fruitless, so I can do libel now.
Brother,
that's
Christ almighty, Josiah.
I'm just gonna add. We're gonna add like a really long disclaimer to the end of this, to the end of the podcast, and like the sped up disclaimer voice.
Yeah, like a gambling ad. Like a gambling ad. You need to do that. Like a gambling ad.
Like the content of this podcast is intended as satire and parody. No.
Satire, parody.
Fair use, blah blah blah. That in there.
Yeah. So we were talking today about Late Victorian Holocausts, as I've probably said about 3 times thus far. So this was my pick. Last pick was the Basque History of the World, which Chris picked out. And then Jake's will be the next pick. So we'll find out at the end of the episode what it is. Very exciting. The reason I picked this is like the concept behind the book club with Chris and I, like in the beginning, was just like nonfiction books we've been meaning to read, but just never have gotten around to it and needed that like push. And this is one of those books that's been that way, where I have seen it cited consistently as a really important historical text for especially a lot of modern leftist thinkers. But also it is called Late Victorian Holocausts and El Nino Famines and the Making of the Third World, and my copy has a bunch of starving children on it, and that never seems like the kind of like reading I want to wind down the end of the day with, and so I put it off for a few years. Which I regret now that I've read it. I do regret that. I mean, it is as depressing as it looks like it's going to be, but I have felt it affect how I looked at things over the last like month of reading it. I don't know if you guys felt the same way or not.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I was not having a fun time.
Sorry for picking this book out.
It's rough. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, there are points where, and we'll get to this, but like, there are points where they're describing this shit as like the people in India being fed less per day than like the worst concentration camps during the Holocaust. And it's just like, ooh.
I listened to an audiobook of it with the physical copy, occasionally peeking at it when I wanted to like really be like, wait, what did I just hear? Like,
okay, but that's like, what did I just read?
Yeah. And it was so funny because I would be listening to it throughout the workday, and when my girlfriend would come into the room, she would just like suddenly look cold, like just stare like, what the fuck? Because I would just be kind of, at this point, kind of numb to it at this point, and I'd just be listening to like, yeah, they were making, meatballs out of human flesh.
Yeah, or you know, like, hey, everyone was so weak that the animals were just like, hey, we can have a go at that person.
Mm-hmm.
No, what the hell? Like, Coyote
just
doesn't
like
want to. Coyote doesn't want to eat you.
Yeah, birds just like terrorizing like children and stuff because they were so weak that the birds were stronger.
Yeah, the birds were like, hey, we can have a go. Like,
oh my god.
Oof. There was. I was reading this, like I burned through it while Kim and I were on vacation. Which, hey, the vacation was good, but holy crap, this was not a fun little side. This was not a fun side quest.
No,
like every time I would put the book down, and Kim would be like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "No, I just read about like 10,000 people dying."
Yeah,
that wasn't
just like
good.
I didn't even know this happened. And early on, he makes a jab at a historian I like, to be clear, Hobsbawm. So I was a little defensive. I was like, no, don't go after Hobsbawm. I like him, but it was a right call as he was pointing at, I think, Age of Capital, and then whatever the one after that is, and he's like, Hobsbawm doesn't talk about this. This stuff happening, and it's like literally 20 to the numbers go even higher than 20 million, but like 20 million people dying worldwide.
Yeah.
And even Hobsbawm, the great Marxist historian himself, did not pay attention to this way that capital was crushing the global South.
Yeah, like didn't pay attention and didn't care to pay attention.
Bit of a bummer.
So I think, and we may have mentioned this, but the book is specifically about, its title gets to the point. Late Victorian Holocausts. It's about a series of famines in the late 1800s, early 1900s that were exacerbated by, or according to Davis, were exacerbated by the economic policies of colonial empires,
specifically Britain.
Yes, specifically Britain.
There's a lot of condemnation for the Dutch in there as well.
The Dutch and Japan does make an appearance too with the
with Korea.
This.
But anyway,
go ahead. But it's essentially the argument is that yes, the environmental conditions made these areas susceptible to drought, but that the resultant famines were not just a result of the weather. It was the weather combined with the all-consuming need to profit. Or as Davis says, the religious adherence to Adam Smith's principles that caused famine, and of course he defines famine as partly human made in that. So it's the combination of capitalism and
drought.
The El Nino Southern Oscillation droughts that cause these extremely horrific events.
Yeah, it's like the simple shorthand to think of in your head is Mike Davis's idea is he's always using drought famine with a hyphen between the two. Drought is the natural side, famine is man-made.
Drought is like a thing that happens in the world. Sometimes the rain doesn't come. Famine is a thing that happens when we decide not to feed people. And
because
that's a pretty, at this point, that's a pretty well established line of thinking, is that droughts are natural, famines are created. We can feed people. There's plenty of food.
In the past, Like if we're talking ancient history, then I think drought and famine, they can really just be the result of nature because there was not the infrastructure to sometimes maintain the food or whatever. But in the modern age, there is no such thing as a natural famine.
Yeah,
because there is always enough food.
Give people stuff.
Yes. So I quickly want to go through.
Iowa has enough fucking corn.
Yeah, right. We have so much corn. Now, so I'll go through real quick a couple things that I think are kind of his basic thesis statements that I think then kind of makes it easier to talk about the rest of it. So the first is there's just a good little quote from him. I didn't pull this directly from him. I believe I'm paraphrasing him, but the fin de siècle, which is like, the end of the 19th century, is usually regarded as a golden age in European and US history. This is the Gilded Age in the US. This is, the Victorian era. This is like when these nation states come to prosper in Europe. But for the rest of the world, that period is remembered as an era of horror and concentration camps. And basically how this plays out, like a timeline, zoom out real quick of everything he's going to talk about, is that the Enso cycle, which he gets into a lot of detail about, and I think we're not going to get into nearly as much because none of us know our meteorology that well, but the Enso cycle, is kind of going in and out from it causes droughts and floods, basically. So between the period from the American Revolution to the crowning of Queen Victoria, Enso had a high amplitude that caused a lot of natural disasters. The weakness from the drought, like from droughts and stuff that happened because of the natural disasters and the floods, affected those areas. They weakened those areas, and that allowed for colonial expansion. So colonizers used the presence of drought and natural disasters to encroach on China, India, various places like that. And so went on to calm after this colonial expansion, which opened the door for even more expansion during what is generally called like Hobsbawm labels, like the Age of Capital during that time. And during that period, there was a bunch of building of agricultural structures in areas that were only habitable because of basically a fluke, because of basically a current calm period in the Enso. And it was, making the assumption that this would be the new norm. This then led to a series of crises in the 1860s and 1870s, which is where the book really gets going. After the 1870s, the Enso calms again for a decade in the 1880s. Everyone kind of recovers and goes like, okay, that was bad. We're not going to do it again. But turns out it gets bad again in the 1890s all the way into the 1920s. And then this was where things got really, really bad. And so, onward, he tracks kind of the Enso, where it from 1926 to 1971, it's been actually really, really calm. But in recent years, and this was written around the turn of the millennium, we're actually returning to a lot of the same kind of state of the environment.
We're getting
now.
into this shit is bad, and like we talked about it like just a little bit, but like there's a giant drought in Brazil right now. Again,
right now,
like the Amazon is the lowest that anyone has ever measured. That's not great.
Especially because Brazil is one of the, this book focuses primarily on 3 big countries, and Brazil's one of them. It's Brazil, India, and China. India, I think, is where it spends most of its time, but those are the big 3. And then it tries to get into smaller cases that were happening in like Africa and other parts of Asia. But so Brazil being the same, at a low level, the Amazon being at a low level right now is reflective of like, keep in mind that this was one of the huge famine, places
like,
in the Victorian era.
Yeah. And it like turns out, oh, hey, there's an El Nino happening right now. Oh, like this isn't good. I think, go ahead, Jake, go ahead.
I was just going to say that it's also interesting to see this rise in Enso activity coincide with a sort of right-wing international wave
that we're watching right now.
fascism and austerity, because one thing that you notice is a lot of the things that are traditional conservative policies and traditional conservative arguments are the same things that the British Empire was saying about the people it was crushing when they didn't work. Namely, um, you know, oh, I think these people are just lazy. There were
Mm-hmm.
rumors of organized shirking, that people would just
Mm-hmm.
get together and just not work, and people allegations that people were just hoarding food somewhere, that actually
Yeah.
they weren't working and they were just hiding all the food that they were supposed to be putting on the train to get taken to somewhere that could afford it. Um, uh, uh, and there was means testing. There were
Mm-hmm.
work requirements. There was means testing, these are the same things you see today. Like, you need to, we're going to do a job guarantee. We're going to do workfare, basically.
Mm-hmm.
The Australian job guaranteers have straight up said, what we're doing is workfare. You
Mm-hmm.
need to provide in order to receive, and the allegations of hoarding are like classic, just like welfare queen type stuff, um, with all the corresponding racism. There,
Oh
because
yeah.
of course they were extremely racist to all of these colonized groups.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that's so obviously like the state of things in the US from austerity, or Australia because about austerity, is not nearly as bad as this, but you have to understand, I think what this book shows is just how far that capitalists will follow this logic. So it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, like the work test, the reason that you want to be against workfare, right? Like welfare for work, is because this is how far they'll take it. They will kill millions and millions of people to maintain it.
Mhm.
And
So,
remember that they're not killing them. Remember, they're not the ones killing them.
Oh, of course, no,
They're
no, no.
they're removed from it. It's the weather. It's just unfortunate weather,
It's the
and
invisible hand
also
of the market. It's just
it's the
guiding things
invisible
this
hand.
way. Sorry.
It's not. I will say, as our friend of the pod, David Graeber, has said, the invisible hand is actually a little bit different than that. But
Yeah.
that's not really what Adam Smith was talking about. But that's
No,
what
no.
it's come to mean due to our U Chicago overlords.
Well, and
Um,
I know Chris is kind of a Adam Smith defender at times, and I'll
I
let you
am
speak about
too.
that
I
in a
am
second.
too.
But what I'll say
yeah,
is it's kind
sorry,
of like
I like Old Boy didn't suck that bad.
well,
I
right,
mean,
right. But my point is
he
yeah, yeah, yeah.
identified like Adam Smith identified a series of relations within human society that could be mutually beneficial, right?
right.
Like that is what Adam Smith identified when he was
Of course, he
like
was wrong about it, but that's a different.
sure, but like
Yeah.
there's so many times in Wealth of Nations where he is like, hey, the state needs to intervene on behalf of people who do not have resources.
Right.
There's
And
so many times that he does that. Like when I was actually reading Wealth of Nations, I went, Jesus Christ, this man's a fucking socialist.
right. No, yeah, I mean, Marx was building off Adam Smith, but what I would say is like, the reason I bring up Adam Smith here is because I think what you could see the kind of fetishized relationship with the invisible hand of the market, or the market, in the context of late Victorian Holocausts, and then the modern day, might be kind of like the same relationship social Darwinism has to evolution.
Oh,
Where
okay, yeah.
you see what I'm saying? Where it's like what it did is it takes a theory, it kind of sands off the complexities of the theory, and then kind of makes it like a fetishistic racist object.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what's going on here. Is it's because it's not even really market principles, and like okay,
No,
if you were truly a rationalist market. all your workers being dead is not a good idea.
No, and
on
all of these
market.
people, and all of these people could be consuming things that you're making, but they're dying. Why did you do that?
There is an irrational relationship with
the
Invisible Hand, with market, with this stuff. It's not, what I think Adam Smith was often wrong about, and a lot of economists are wrong about, is assuming that humans are rational agents that make rational decisions based off the market logic. No, even the people who are running the market right now are making decisions based off a religious adherence to both colonialism and, that in market supremacy. That you don't fuck with the market ever.
I think we also, I think we also need to remember that this wasn't that long ago. Like 120 odd years is not that long.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like this stuff just happened in human history.
People have grandparents.
People like to think that that was so long ago. Even the civil rights movement is now so long ago.
So long ago.
Racism is gone. We've dealt with that, but it's really not. It's all here. It's all baked in, and it just all becomes more and more covert. I think one of my favorite books says that. I'm sure all of us enjoy are, like I said, David Graeber enjoyers, and debt really talks about how capitalism just makes debt and debt slavery more and more and more covert. It makes the operations of colonialism, the operations of capitalism more and more covert until it's just baked in, until it's dogma.
Do we want to hop to the specific nations and kind of talk about what happened? And I think that will then reinvigorate the conversation as it goes. Because we have more examples of what we're talking about.
I think that's a good idea.
Well, let's start with India, which is also where he spends most of his time.
Christ almighty.
The reason I gave that kind of timeline is because I think this is not exactly how it plays through, but here's the easiest way to think of this historically. 1870s, famine. 1880s, break from famine. 1890s, back to famine. That's pretty much the case with all of these nations. So that's a good little way of talking about this. So we start with 1870s in all these nations. So the 1877 famine specifically is when is really where things get atrocious in India. And part of it is I'm pissed at myself for writing the last name of a guy and not the first name of a guy. So the guy's last name was Temple. I don't remember his first name.
Oh, Temple.
Fucking Temple.
Goddamn Temple.
Essentially
I'm
going
to find him in hell and kill him.
Yeah, because he used market economics as colonial genocide. So, this became like a source of he was mad at medical officials who were elevating public health over public finance. And there was this push for, charitable organizations, because that's also a facet of the British Victorian era, like neocons, Gertrude Himmelfarb and stuff love to talk about the reason Victorian capitalism was the ideal capitalism is it was also tempered by these charitable movements. But this is interesting because this is the exact opposite, because what happened was the Anti-Charitable Contribution Act of 1877 was passed, which prohibited private donations. So not even public interference, but any private donations which would interfere with the market. And in the following summer, several million people died because of this. So the work camps they set up were so bad that people were begging to be arrested because jails had better conditions than the work camps.
And they fed you better.
They fed you better, right? And
because in the work camps, you got, like I said earlier, not only did they give you low amounts of resources, like a couple, was it like a cup of rice a day or something?
It was
something
shockingly low.
And then they also had starvation tests. They had starvation testing in which the people that they were torturing essentially as part of this quote unquote experiment were receiving less food per day than in the worst Holocaust camps. It's, like you said, I mean, until this book came out, this was not in the Western canon. These happenings.
Well, You know, some semi-equivalent stuff that is in the Western canon gets whitewashed. So he doesn't talk about it in this book, but there's a lot of similarities with the way that the British handled the Irish potato famine and how they went on to handle much of the global everything else.
This is my goddamn hobby horse. Go on.
Yeah, the potato famine. Yeah. Well, because it's Ireland specifically, but yeah, the potato famine was had the same situation. There was plenty of food in Britain. They refused to, pass it to bring it over. When they did eventually bring food over in the starving work camps to feed people in these work camps, they brought over maize from the New World to a bunch of people who did not have the digestive ability to consume corn, because that was a New World, not an old world food. They're and so it ended up killing people. Then the thing they fed people then killed people.
Sorry, it's not just that. It's that you can live on potatoes, which sounds insane.
No, but they have protein. They have all sorts of shit.
Yeah, potatoes are a relatively whole food. That's why Irish people were growing potatoes. Because what happened is the English, fuck them, said, you have to give us like grains and wool, whatever, like you need to give us this.
Maintain these exports.
Like
and
all
you can eat
of your
potatoes.
land needs to be like set towards export for us. Now, the only thing that Irish folks could do to feed themselves was, in this little hunk of land, make some food for themselves. Well, they could grow potatoes. Potatoes are pretty easy to grow, and they're a complete meal. So that's what Irish people ate. And then when the blight came, that killed what they could eat. And the British didn't let them have all of this other stuff that they were growing.
And so this is where this connects,
and that's exactly the same thing.
And then when they did bring stuff over, it was cheap maize from the New World, which then clogged up their digestive systems or whatever. And this is a parallel. This was an 1840s example, but this is a parallel to what happened in India. So
it's exactly the same thing.
Okay, it's not just a parallel. It's a practice round.
It was the practice. Yes, it was the small scale practice round to a global Holocaust. So what happened was, I think up until this point, you could be hearing what we're saying about India and going like, okay, yeah, the Charitable Contributions Act thing, that's fucked up. But on the whole, it's like, well, there wasn't any food. What were they going to do? There was food in North India.
There was so much.
North India was not. It had transitioned from subsistence farms to like more industrial style farms. They had a ton, and England maintained exports during the famine. This is the trend in all of these examples. All of these examples are drought-ridden countries forced to maintain by colonial empires exports. So they had to, while starving, watch the food that they did grow leave.
Yep. Always.
So I read a few reviews of this book in preparation for this, and I can't remember which review it's from, but one of them I thought made an all right point, which and as a train defender. As a defender of trains, I did take a little bit of issue with Davis's focus on the building of railroads as something that was bad for the Indian people because they were used to shovel exports away from the rural Indian towns into the richer centers. I think he kind of glosses over the fact that state intervention to build the railroads could. I think he glosses over like the possibilities for advancement. I don't recall him even like touching on that. I could be wrong, but he just talks about how the railroads were bad for them, and I just want to defend my boy trains.
So I agree with you. What I would say is how kind of it's unspoken, but I think how I would imagine he would respond to that is more that actually, that they could have been used for good, and that's exactly the point. Is that they did not use the rails for transporting food back to the south. They were being used to transport the food in the north up more north.
Yeah.
That's fair.
That was one of the, again, I had basically that's really it in terms of like my criticism of it. I know you guys had talked about some the issues that you had, but in terms of like criticism of the book, I don't. No, there's really not a lot you can say. I mean, you're just reading it in horror, and that's it. Like,
it's like old boy just lays it out, like, hey, this is the thing that happened, and this is the thing that people did in response to that. I think one of the things that I really want to drill into when we talk about like this book, like these things, is that I mean, we've already said it, but it's like it's human caused. It's because and like part of the subtitle is the making of the third world. So like what is happening here is that the imperial powers, Britain, the United States to some extent, Japan in Korea. We haven't really talked about Japan and Korea and that whole situation.
No, but that's
Brazil in relation with the powers going on. All of that is capitalizing on weather events that put people in dire straits and then tightening control over them and immiserating them in order for them to get more money, to get
classic extraction.
Yeah, it's total. Yeah, absolutely. It's extraction, exactly like you said. It is crazy to think. I just think that it is wild to think that there was a moment when basically the world was more or less equivalent, and then like these people had a little bit of an advantage, and they just leveraged that into making people poor and sick and dying.
Let's get through India, because I think the best example of what you just said there is China, which we'll get to in a second here. But that's especially because China was, I mean, probably was equivalent, if not superior, to European powers up until the Victorian era, essentially.
Yeah, like up until right then. And then they just leveraged it to cripple that fucking country.
So we have then, like we kind of do, 1870s famine, 1880s break from famine. So we get to this break from the famine. During that time, there was this birth of like militant Indian nationalism that starts to rise because of the treatment they received in the 1877 famine. But a lot of those resistance movements were able to get crushed over the 1880s again, and things kind of returned to a status quo. Except what happened was, at the beginning of the 1890s, end of the 1880s, wheat prices in Britain got really high. And so because of that, it was a smart business move for the exporters in India to try to buy up all of the grain in North India to have kind of a monopoly on this export that's worth a lot. Which was, pissing off people. There's clashes with peasants and stuff like that. But on the whole, that's how this goes. And then, lo and behold, by the 1890s, we've got famine again. And so we've repeated the exact same thing that just happened. Exports maintained, workhouses instituted, no aid given. And the 1897 kind of era famine is so bad that there was a... actually, I want to double check this guy's name because I don't feel like I put that in right. Can you see it in the notes? The socialist guy. Yeah, Hindman.
Is it Hindman?
Oh man, but yeah, socialist, dragged off of the, dragged away by the cops in protest of demanding aid be sent to India and in Britain. So it was by this famine when shit was starting to finally get talked about in Britain of like what was going on, and toward the end of the famine, even like the pro-imperial press that was all about those, like we made things good for India because we made the trains, like that kind of, those press was like even going, this is bad, guys. Like there are millions of people dying right now, and the conditions in these work camps are awful. So
it's interesting to note that a lot of the reporting before the mainstream started to pick up on it was missionary groups
mm-hmm.
in these places were the ones reporting back and saying, things are not so great here. Uh,
Yeah.
no one has food, and
Yeah,
Yeah.
this becomes a bigger issue in China because, as you might know from
yeah,
the
yeah,
dates that we're listing here, there was a particular anti-missionary revolt that took place during this time.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, they were the only one of the only
Wait,
people that
sorry.
had their.
That's
Go
the
ahead.
Boxer Rebellion, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about Boxer
yeah.
Rebellion. We'll get back to that. And another aspect of this too that I think I left out with the 1877 famine, but it's consistent throughout this, is extreme drought is often then followed by a bunch of floods, in Enso. And because of that, malaria or various other waterborne illnesses sweep over. So like part of the death count comes from people afterwards getting sick. And actually, this is Davis's most controversial claim, because this is the one that like appears in at least on like the Wikipedia page and stuff, is the thing every critic is like mad about. And I don't know, maybe the citation for it isn't great, but I just don't feel like even if you cut this out, it's like not like anything looks good suddenly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But supposedly, and this is the thing people have broken in on him, is so an epidemic was breaking out in India in the 1890s because of the famine, and the government started doing really intense like epidemic crackdowns, but not still changing the price of grain or anything, but they went through and they burned people's houses down and kidnapped their families and dragged them to like quarantine zones. Now, supposedly there's criticism to say that this is not exactly how it played out, but I feel like it's a real small detail compared to everything else we've talked about, that I just don't think it really does that much damage to his thesis if it isn't true. Chris,
Yeah.
you about to say something?
I mean, okay.
They didn't burn the houses down.
They didn't burn the houses, but like, okay. I'm sure they did a lot of bad stuff.
It's a lot of the criticism of this book is framing him as like this crankish conspiracy theorist, and I think that's the example they love to pull out because that's the one that sounds the most that way. Like, you didn't even know this, but they were burning down the houses. But it's like everything else, he has just like things Parliament did as their evidence.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Like literal like acts like decisions of Parliament.
I'm willing to.
Okay, so they don't burn the house. So they don't burn the houses down, and okay, so the starving people are dying of starvation instead of exposure. Okay,
because I
right, and also like I'm willing to give this guy the benefit of the doubt because
on this one,
because of how thoroughly sourced the whole fucking book is.
Yeah. He spends too long talking about the science of Enso, because that's how committed he is to getting every detail right in this.
Like,
the
last
American
quarter of this damn book.
the American Meteorological Society reviewed this book and was like, Mike Davis has provided a massive benefit to the American Meteorological Society because of his work on documenting Enso and stuff like that.
And
this guy is just a Marxist writer, a Marxist professor.
Again, just the last quarter of this is notes. It's citations. The last quarter of this is citations. You cannot claim that the man didn't do his work.
Oh man, absolutely. And
I don't know. Maybe the American Meteorological Association or American Meteorological Society, whatever, is some kind of secret Marxist op. Maybe they're just woke, and I don't know. But it seems like if this group is he's kind of right about this science. He's really made a great contribution to our work, that maybe he does kind of know what he's talking about, and he wouldn't just make up stuff.
No, and see the thing is the reason the disproving the whole burning the houses down thing to me is annoying is because I don't think it's the point of that chunk. I think his point there is that this is the insult to injury, is that the government will refuse to set prices for grain, refuse to increase like imports or whatever to the region, but they will somehow have enough state capacity to start burning houses down. That's the point of it. So if you say, oh, they didn't burn the houses down, it's still like, okay, but they never set the grain prices. That's the real thing. That's like the thing that they did wrong.
It's like not having enough state resources to feed or provide water for 2 million people in a small little contained area, but having the state resources to drop bombs on their hospitals.
Right. Man, that's a really specific example. What's going on with that?
Anyway. Wonder who's funding that. That's crazy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we had to talk. I mean, it's getting kind of crazy that Israel-Palestine hasn't come up on Fruitless yet, so it's kind of good.
Oh my fucking God.
It's the same shit, though. It's the same.
It is. You're right. It's the same shit. You're right. It is the same shit.
You know?
It is. It's... God damn it.
We'll give them work permits. They can come out and they can produce for the colonizer.
And if they don't produce, then fuck them.
Yeah, then fuck them, and they can. It's literally a famine, a Davis-defined human-made famine. And because I was actually just listening to something about this recently that the state of Israel has desertified massive amounts of their country because of water overuse and resource mismanagement, and regularly bulldozes agricultural sites for that were owned and worked by Palestinians, namely olive groves, hundreds of year-old olive groves.
And this is it's not a far off comparison to throw this in here as a modern example, maybe on a smaller scale of what was taking place.
Yeah. Of capital-driven famine.
Okay,
I want to be really clear here that this is capitalism. This is colonial capitalism, which is redundant, and we can get to that. But it's capitalism driving this. It's extraction, and it's the need to keep up a certain standard of living for one group at the to the detriment of another. Obviously, there's a lot more facets to it, but with racism and things like that. And
on that topic, so this is something that I wanted to talk about: food deserts. Like,
that's famine.
How is that? Like, it's the exact same thing. That is a famine because, like on Davis's,
definition,
definition. Like, these are people who don't have access to food that nourishes them. They don't have access to food that is good for them. But they just, they gotta eat. And then, we talked about it, but it's like, okay, all you have is shitty food, and then we look back at you and go, why are you guys so unhealthy? Well,
right.
Because they don't have any good food. Like, who's going to get in their car? Who's going to get in their car and drive 30 minutes to the fucking grocery store that has good food? Like, I wouldn't do that, but do you know what I do have?
No.
2 grocery stores in 10 minutes from me. I can walk.
Right.
To those grocery stores if I really want to.
And then when you get it to the level of the colonial powers and people start dying en masse, you get to, and I think that maybe we haven't hit on this hard enough, but the last word in the title is a little bit of a controversial one: Holocaust. The general term used for the systematic extermination of Jewish people and other racial and minority groups in World War II by the Germans. Now, that's not, and I think Davis specifically chooses this word to highlight the horror of these deaths, right? Of these mass deaths.
One thing he's conscious about early in the beginning, though, is that he does not use capital H Holocaust, which is in reference to specifically, what took place in Germany in the 40s. But it is it's not the Holocaust, but it is a lowercase h Holocaust.
Yeah. It is a Holocaust, but it's not.
I think he refers to the Holocaust as the Shoah.
Yes.
But I think that the word is chosen. There can't be any other reason for choosing the word other than to bring that to mind. It's very clear that when you reach these levels of intentional restriction of resources, such that it causes this level of mass death, you are engaging in a Holocaust. And it's
I think we can
you look at the sources that the man marshals, and I don't know how you can come to a conclusion other than that, is that like these people were happy to see, and when I say that, like, I genuinely mean that they were happy to see all of those people die. And fuck, man, it is a bummer to just, oh, cool, that's another 1,000 dead people. Cool shit. But these fuckers were happy about it. They did not give a shit.
Well, they got more treats. They got more treats out of it. But anyway, let's go on, Josiah.
I was going to say, let's wrap up India and move to China. But I want the postscript on India, I will say, is, so it finally, these famine years come to the end in 1902. There was consistent stiffened relief eligibility, all the same stuff. And during this period that, we've talked about of India from the 1870s to the end of the 1890s, 20 million people died. Overall, like what we're going to talk about throughout this, the numbers are hard to verify because it's hard to verify 19th century population numbers, in the same way we can now. But the entire book is going to deal with 30 to 60 million. So 30 on the low end, 60 on the high end deaths. So that's something to keep in mind.
Like that's a California and a Texas.
Yeah.
Just gone.
Now, China is a really interesting case study here. And, for a couple of reasons, because this played out slightly differently in China, partially because unlike India, China isn't under like direct British rule, but it's I would say like, obviously, yes, colonialism and capitalism are the same thing, but I would say like you look at India, it's more distinctly a colonial situation. With China, it's a more distinctly capitalist situation, which is like global capitalist powers bullying a nation into opening up their markets. That's essentially what took place here.
Well, yeah, and like taking over like specific port cities.
Yeah, and so
like, if you don't have a port, you can't do shit, but we own the port. So, okay, cool. Yeah, I guess you have all of this over here, but like we have the port.
And a chunk of Davis's research that I think gets overlooked a bit, but I think is a really important aspect, is what he talks about the role of like traditional structures in, indigenous cultures or whatever throughout, these various nations. There were structures built to deal with famine. So in India, there was a general obligation from the state, prior to British colonization of like rich aristocrats needed to provide for the peasantry during times of famine. And so this is especially the case in China. So the story with China, he doesn't quite tell it chronologically, but I kind of organized the notes chronologically. It begins actually in like the early 1700s during the Yongzheng emperor. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, but during the Qing dynasty, there was an ongoing sense of Like the monarchy was constantly paying attention to grain prices and trying to set prices to, export stuff to certain regions or whatever to maintain low grain prices. So while I'm no defender of monarchy, the Chinese monarchy during this time was invested in not doing and not allowing the kind of thing that is going to happen to happen. And in general, there's this assumption that like China was this like struggling area throughout history. That's, I feel like, a kind of racist assumption consistently. And, one thing Davis kind of points to is that there has been an ongoing idea that the end of the Ming dynasty into the Qing dynasty, the Qing came alongside a huge population boom. But there is more and more evidence that the Ming dynasty was actually also really heavily populated. So China, because that was a way to explain away what took place. It's like there's a big population boom, so they didn't know how to handle famine once it came around. That's not true. There is a good chance that China has just kind of always been really heavily populated, but especially, at least in the Ming dynasty as well, which saw nothing comparable to the Victorian era. But yeah, the monarchs would force upper classes to do charity. There was kind of a traditional structure in place to prevent any kind of starvation to take place. And then our boys from the Great Britain itself decided to arrive and fix that problem of traditional organization.
I don't think David Ricardo would approve of this. We need to fix this.
Did you say Daniel Ricardo?
David Ricardo.
Oh. I thought you were making a Formula One joke for a second there.
No. I literally know nothing about Formula One. You will never hear me make a joke. Other than that, Lewis's IWCs look terrible. He should stop doing collaborations with them.
So basically, what happened was
saying mean things about Lewis. Lewis is my beautiful boy, and I love
this has been Fruitless Sports Corner.
So this is something that I did kind of want to talk about, like what you were getting into there, Josiah, is that like there's these communal, like it's a thing. We talked about it the last time that we talked about on Fruitless, of like, I don't know what to do as far as like big structures and little structures, right? And like the way that it seems like the old like Chinese system used to work, and probably the old Indian system used to work before the British came and fucked it up, was that there was like a relatively communal like back and forth.
Lower.
And
yes.
And that was good. And then you get a capitalist horseshit situation that just like pulls things out from the community.
It erodes communities, essentially.
Right.
Alienation. You hate to see it.
You hate to see it. It's what it does, like in literal sense, was like so subsistence farmers were pushed into being part of the global market. And the thing is, like, capitalism didn't work in such a way that like all these subsistence farmers suddenly became like entrepreneurs and they were still guided by this logic of communal living, but were getting forced to export what they were producing and consider themselves an agent of the market. And so the communities that existed were getting just demolished by the global market.
Yeah.
Well,
and like
because when you have
to
export your stuff, when you have to export your stuff, you don't have anything to give to other people.
There's nothing to give to your neighbors, because I had to sell it to dipshit Jones in the gray suit in the Capitol. But I just feel like there has to be a middle ground here, where it's like you're making stuff for your neighbors, and they're also making stuff for you. And like that's lost in the like, purely capitalist transaction. And there's probably a like, I don't know, quote unquote more efficient way to do it than like what they were doing before. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about that too. I don't know. But like
It would be cool if we could come up with an ideology that went beyond the alienation of capitalism and made it more so efficient that we could distribute things relatively equally among our neighbors.
Yeah,
That would be,
yeah.
you know, it's
when people need things, they get them.
Yeah,
and when people
like if you have the ability,
when people can do stuff, they do it.
You know, it's like, you know, it's something, we need a system that addresses this social question, right? Perhaps it could be called like a socialism, perhaps, or maybe a
socialism.
Communism.
I know I was being like totally like, I know that I was being totally freshman year there, but like it really is like that's a problem. Is
well, yeah, and what I think, I think what these regions didn't have was capitalist logic. They don't have the Lockean logic of private property.
Yeah, that is a thing that gets pushed upon them. That is, in fact, I don't think it's natural.
Of
like
markets.
I don't want to say, I don't want to act like there's some like really true human nature, because I think that's all very socially defined. But I think there's a sense in which thinking of yourself as an economic agent is not natural to just humans. I think it has to be enforced.
And obviously these regions had markets, etc. They didn't have the very specific, as far as I know, I'm not some kind of master anthropologist, but as far as I can tell, the very specific form of market logic of British capitalism was not there. And so so there's no assumption that the market is what will distribute goods. So they understand. It seems to me that these areas hadn't forgotten that the state is what creates and decides how the market is going to run.
Mm-hmm.
When the UK and America and modern capitalist nation states leave things to the whim of the market, when your average libertarian says that, you know, government inefficiency is getting in the way of the market, it's like, well, the market is the government.
That's about what I was. That's what I was going to say.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's no market without a government saying what is and isn't acceptable to trade.
And I'm sure that all of the listeners of Fruitless agree with me already. But if you're happening to upon this podcast and don't agree with me, just read Debt by David Graeber.
Or fight me.
Yeah. You can just fight.
We could challenge Jake the lawyer to a duel.
No. We're not challenging Jake. We're challenging Chris. Come to Chattanooga.
Okay.
Punch your face out.
Make your way down to Tennessee and get
come
in a
to
fight.
Chattanooga. I'll beat your ass.
It's the Chattanooga challenge. The Chattanooga challenge.
And
fuck
this,
you little bitches.
The traditional like lower structure of this stuff getting eroded is pretty drastic, because like, at least according to Davis here, that food consumption was basically the same between classes in Qing China. Holy shit. Like like if there is a just monarchy, which there isn't, but if there was, it would look like that, right? Yep. And but of course we the British show up,
as they are wont to do.
You know what? We like to rag on the English, and we should. Mm-hmm. But the Scots,
they were there too.
They were there, and they were really bad. Like the Welsh.
They were the cops. The cops of the colonies. But anyway,
and
the Welsh are more or less blameless.
This push
Scotland. What the hell?
This push to be involved in the global markets or whatever led to then more corruption within the monarchy, which was something that boiled over in the 1850s into the Taiping Rebellion, which is, I feel like in the West not known as well as it should. It is like one of the deadliest wars of all time. Because of a lot of reasons. But one of the big things that the Taiping Rebellion was against the Qing dynasty for was perceptions of withholding famine relief. So we're starting to see the beginnings of what's going to come in the Taiping Rebellion. Go ahead, Chris. You look like you were about to say something.
No, I was just trying to remember something from Lions Led by Donkeys.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
It wasn't working.
So we get to the 1870s now, where our real famine years, and exactly what you expect to happen happens. They're forced to maintain exports during this period. They maintain exports. People get so hungry they are eating leaves and reeds. And a lot of the primary sources we have from this time are from missionaries, as we mentioned, who were living in China. Shaanxi was the worst affected province. And the Qing dynasty just did not respond, because of its now introduction of this capitalist logic it's following. And missionaries went on to blame the state of Shaanxi on opium use. And they talked about the wonderful opening that this famine provided to, start really winning people over to Christ. So I would say with the missionaries in India,
pretty bad.
You read those and you're kind of sympathetic to them because they feel like they're just kind of there and they're just watching stuff and trying to help.
And going, Jesus Christ.
The Chinese missionaries, oh my God. They're really, really bad.
Dude, starve and convert. That's the
Yeah, it was
You've
the
heard
approach,
of flirt and convert. Now, I do want to say I got two things. One, we do need to mention, since Taiping mentioned, we need to mention that their leader thought he was Jesus's brother. I think that's so awesome. That's so. That
was my Lions Led by Donkeys thing. That's what it was.
Yes.
Oh,
that's what it was.
Oh, it's
Jesus's brother.
That is okay. If you want to go down an interesting Wikipedia rabbit trail, look up the statements of faith and stuff like that associated with the Taiping Rebellion. It's fucking wild. It's this really strange syncretic Chinese Christianity. It's very interesting.
Yeah. It's wild. But my other thing that I wanted to say was the blaming of the Shaanxi famine on opium use is another one of those echoes of that are still with us today in modern times. Drug use, blaming social ills on drug use is
Well, I mean, the opioid epidemic that we're living in, supposedly right now.
It's a total I learned it from you situation.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, sorry, guys. I gotta pee.
No worries.
I am gonna piss my pants if I don't go now. I'll be right back.
No worries.
I did want to mention. I think we didn't mention it, but I'm pretty sure it's China where he talks about the 10,000 men holes. In which mass graves were dug for people that died because of the famine, and they were known in Chinese as 10,000 men holes. Just another absolutely devastating record of a devastating black mark on the long laundry list of horrors committed by colonial British.
To deal with this, one of the things by the 1870s was this push to just actually increase missionary relief campaigns to come in. They're annoying, but they're bringing food in. But so by the end of the 1870s, you have like a big push of increased missionary presence in China. Now, again, 1880s, things are okay-ish. Everyone tries to recover. Then 1890s, everyone's hit again, even worse, like it's the trend with all of these. So basically during the 1890s famine, 30% of Shanxi's population died. And this is also the first chunk in the book we start getting talking about cannibalism. People being forced
Yeesh.
at that desperate level to do that. There's these reports out of Siam of human meatballs being made and sold by street vendors. Like, things got really bad. And during this time, another chunk of this book throughout it is that these famines bring about millenarian movements and like apocalyptic movements. And so one of those being the Boxer Rebellion, which breaks out by 1900, which was, the presence of these Christian missionaries is what's causing it. And we need to fucking get them out of here. And the Qing dynasty kind of used that because like the early demands were like, equal division of grain and stuff like that. But the Qing dynasty found, well, if we make this like a nationalistic movement rather than about like the economic system and just have them kind of focus more on getting the missionaries out, then that's not going to affect the economy as much. And so in a lot of ways, the Boxer Rebellion was like, to be clear, like a totally understandable desire to push out the colonizers, but also like the focus being drawn specifically on these religious or racial divides rather than looking at the economic system that was being brought by the colonizers was part of the Qing dynasty's attempt to maintain power and maintain capitalism.
I mean, in some ways it's akin to what Republicans do. Where they, try to make everyone's life worse and then make you scared about queer people. Now, I do really want to be clear. I am not drawing a
it's not the
comparison
direct
between
comparison.
Christian missionaries in China and queer people existing. I am not trying to do that. I like queer people and missionaries. I can take or leave. There we go.
Chris, that does not
really depends.
Chris, there's something I didn't hear in there, and I just want to say that did not sound like a Hamas condemnation to me. I think you need to.
You have not denounced this enough yet. Man, we're living in crazy times.
What in the whole hell, Jake? God damn it. Man, I am glad that
he's not on the Josiah. He refuses to condemn Hamas.
Yeah.
What is going on? What is going on here?
That's right. Man, I don't want to get started on this because this is a whole thing that I've been going crazy about watching. Is just the hysteria right now is really bad, and we're just trying to do a fucking history podcast episode right now, but the current events keep encroaching.
You guys want to not condemn Hamas?
You want to talk about Brazil real quick?
Let's talk about Brazil.
Let's fuck with Brazil.
I mean, Brazil is a lot of the same situation.
Starting out with the poisonous cacti. My God, dude.
Yeah. So there was this push toward.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Actually, what was the state of Brazil in the beginning of this? Actually, now I'm like kind of double checking myself because I didn't take as many notes on Brazil as I should have.
I think when this starts, it's just pre-Empire, and then it's Empire of Brazil under Pedro.
Okay.
For a good hunk of it, and then it's. I mean, Brazil's annoying.
It's some complicated history here. That's ongoing with the book club. Ongoing book club thing would be interesting to just do a book about Brazil at some point. I would maybe be interested in that.
We could do the Jakarta method.
Oh,
I know it's like
that's Chile mostly and Indonesia, but yeah. Oh man, I don't. Have you ever read Jakarta Method, Chris? Because I've read it before, but I would reread it to see how mad it would make you.
Oh, you would lose your mind. If this made you mad, whew, wait until the U.S. gets involved.
Jakarta's about CIA and CIA actions in the global South in the like the 20th century.
Awesome.
I will say I have not read that book. But the idea that you two want me to read it specifically so that you can see my head blow off is.
What happens? Like everyone in the Discord who's read it, is like, "Fuck the CIA." Like that's literally
yeah.
Like,
well, because it's about
okay, but like I'm already there.
Okay, but you don't.
Now do you want to?
You're there. You think you're there.
Until you read about the billion people dying in Indonesia through the anti-communist crusades, then
Suharto? Like I know about Suharto.
It's
okay.
Anyway, future book club book, I think.
Yeah.
But so Brazil, let's let's go through. It's pretty much a lot of the same thing. 1870s, we get the famine. We have specifically poisonous cacti in Brazil that people began to eat, knowing it was poisonous because it was the only food.
Yeah.
Well, no, they didn't. They didn't. There were refugees.
Oh, excuse me.
That didn't know that the cacti was poisonous, but the local ranchers would use it to kill anthills. And then the refugees were like, we just need something to eat. Hey, here's this cacti. They ate it, and they all went blind.
That's right.
They all went blind.
And this being a particularly Catholic region, Brazil, so, all of these things get interpreted in religious language. For Brazil, it was a lot of God is punishing us. And that was kind of the consistent thing, which is kind of an ongoing thing, I think, in Latin American history in the 19th century as well, of these like panics surrounding natural disasters and millenarian movements springing up. Brazil has a lot of some of the most intense millenarian movements springing up too. But yeah, so epidemic broke out in the 1870s. They followed the British model of relief effort from India,
and there it was small. In Brazil, it was smallpox in Brazil.
That's right.
Which wiped them out.
Yeah, and we ended up with, they technically had better sized rations, but the work camps were just as bad. This also like lines up with, the 1880s and like the abolition of slavery in Brazil, which is its own complicated history that I don't know if we should get too deep into because it comes back and it goes away and it's
have you guys read it's Mario Vargas Llosa. I want to say the book is called War of the End of the World or At the End of the World. Trying to find it.
I have not.
That sounds good though.
Book. And if I wasn't up here talking to you guys, I would run downstairs and find it because it's like I know it's right there on it. But it's called War at the End of the World. It's basically about this. But
is it about the Canudos rebellion?
Yep.
In the 1890s? Okay, yeah.
Yep.
Thank you for saying that because this book doesn't talk too much about it, and I was like, that's a rabbit trail I want to go on later.
Yeah.
So
Llosa
this was in the
good. Llosa is like populist and reactionary at the same time. Yeah.
Love that. I love when that happens.
It's a good book. It's worth reading, but like it's about this and like if you read so this like that book when I read it was like my first ever encountering of famine in Brazil, and I was like, "Dang, they had famines." And I read it, and I was like, oh, "That sounds fucked." And then I read this book, and I was like, "Oh, that happened a bunch of times, and it was really bad every time it happened." Oh no.
Okay, so pushing us through as fast as we can. We have a lot more to cover here, so I want to move quickly here. But yeah, so in the 1890s, we have the return of the famine, and this time the revitalization of a religious side to this. And so there's these like revolts of kind of folk Catholicism springing up, the Sebastianist eschatology. And then the Canudos, was it a commune? It was like a city that they formed briefly. It made me think of Munster a little bit. in the Middle Ages.
Or Waco.
Where it's I, I guess. I think I thought of it a little more positively than that, but sure, yeah.
You don't think
Either
of
way,
Waco as positive?
No, I don't think I don't think David Koresh is a great man. I'll go ahead and say that for the record.
I love the fact that the whole time that they were like yeah, he comes. The cops were like, yeah, he comes to like the Sam's Club to like buy a bunch of shit every week, and they like, if you just told us, we would have picked him up. What the fuck? The most classic cop move. Anyway,
there is a again, it's kind of, because it's like a folk millenarian movement, it's kind of hard to label, because like some people called it communist and some people called it monarchist, but there was, this city under rebellion, under a religious movement that essentially gets sieged and pretty much everyone killed. It is still an empty region to this day. It's just ruins of it are still there. So
I think it was difficult at this point in the book. It was difficult to read about Brazil. I think because everything was blurring together, just like tragedy after tragedy after tragedy.
Well, let's do the blur here. Let's talk about all the other regions real quick, and I could just go quickly through them, because there's a lot of them, but we can just go fast, because this happens. These three regions are the most heavily affected. They are not the only places this happens. So
this is the side effect list.
This is the side. Yeah, these are just the side stories. So Korea was forced to maintain exports of rice to Japan throughout this whole thing. Vietnam, throughout this period, saw massive millenarian movements brought on by the belief in reincarnation that began attacking French colonizers.
Nothing bad happens there.
Consistent attack on French colonizers in Indonesia, the Dutch in Indonesia. You have the Philippines and the Spanish. There were indigenous shamans who were
nothing bad happens in the Philippines either.
Who were trying to make rain happen because the priests couldn't do it, supposedly, and millenarian movements break up there. All of these places have the same thing happen, where market principles are getting applied when they do not work. Southern Africa, we have droughts, which allowed the Portuguese to expand into Southern Africa. We have the Zulu quoted as saying, "I think that the English chiefs have stopped the rain." Who, and they went on to massacre a bunch of British troops.
Yeah, and then we get the Boer War.
We get the Boer War, yeah. That triggers this. In North Africa, we have Egypt getting pressured by European tax collectors to keep collecting on starving people throughout these famines. We have Algeria forced to liquidate all of their source of wealth and livestock to compete in the market. Same stuff happens in Morocco, Australia, Polynesia, and Oceania generally. There were also droughts in even Andalusia and Bosnia. I'm not even done.
We'll never be done.
Go. You got this.
God.
If there's something that I have learned from this, is that we'll never fucking be done with the impact.
They're just continue to have it.
Inshallah, we will be done when global communism comes, and
that's right. One of these days,
when luxury space global communism. Gay global communism comes and makes us all
luxury gay space communism. Give it
more droughts happen in Ireland during this region, which increased the amount of Irish people who were migrating to the U.S. One of the only places that actually benefited from this area was Tahiti in North California, had massive rainfall, which, if you think of your time period, this increased a lot of the move out west that was going on at the time. Chris, what do you have to say?
Yeah, that also fucked us.
Oh, in the long run?
Yeah.
Or then, yeah.
All of California's water rights situation is based on, it was super wet right now. It's gonna keep raining, right?
Never mind.
It won't.
Never
No,
mind.
it
It
won't.
wasn't a good thing for North California.
It
Never
was
mind.
bad.
And I just want to say we actually don't like we're actually not
The Colorado River is
of the
dry.
Irish we're actually not fans of the Irish migration because it brought
No.
us the stereotype of the Irish cop. So
That's true.
we
That's
don't
true. More
we don't
cops
like
in
that.
Boston, yeah.
Okay, well, I don't like the cop. I don't like the cop thing.
I love
do
the
like,
Irish, though.
I do like the
Yeah.
Irish being here.
No, I love the Irish. I love the Irish. This is a pro-Irish, anti-British podcast.
Yeah.
Now, everything I just listed was in regard to the 1870s. Now we have the 1880s column, and now we arrive at the 1890s. Everything happens again. In Korea, we have the organization of farmers into bandit groups to keep surviving by robbing. There was conspiracy theories in Korea going around that white Europeans had milk cans, had these like cans of milk that what was it? They were like supposedly kidnapping Korean women and cutting off their breasts and filling them with milk. So there was, increased, hostility to European colonizers in Korea during this time.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. That's weird, but it's fine.
It's like maybe wrong in the details, but right in the sentiment. Russia, we have even Russia was forced to maintain exports during this period, which was a major power at this time, and even they were suffering through this. Ethiopia entered an era that's called the Cruel Days in there, which was disease killing off livestock and like large periods of desperate prayer from everyone.
Three quarters of the cows
died off.
It's wild that Ethiopia is seen as like the stereotypical example of like starvation and like no food and stuff like that, and it's like this used to be a great power, like in North Africa, and capitalism totally destroyed it. This stuff just like anyway, go on.
Yeah, I'm almost through here. So, of course, we have then in Egypt, a jihadist movement rises up but it gets defeated by famine, which the British use to fight off the jihadist movement. There are accounts of cannibalism throughout pretty much all of the regions we've listed here. In Sudan, whole tribes died out. And stories were coming out from the death of those living in more traditional formats, dying out because of this. Italian-occupied famine areas like the Eritrean highlands experienced the same stuff. I think that... Oh, this is the last thing I wanted to mention. There was a quote, and I'm blanking on where it was from, but it was... it was one of the missionary accounts in Africa. I don't remember which country it was, where a local African said, "Europeans track famines like a sky full of vultures." Which I think is maybe a good note to end this massive list on.
Yeah, I think that's like I think that is like the perfect benediction. Europeans track famines like a sky full of vultures. Bloop.
And I think I think that leads us into. I know we're probably still trying to wrap this up, but I think that's a perfect place to end because it leads us straight into
there we go. This is
prelude
perfect.
to our next book.
So Jake is announcing his pick for the book. We don't know what it. Well, actually, I'm doing
now
the drum roll right
now.
I accidentally spoiled it earlier as we were getting ready because I put my camera on it.
But Chris doesn't know. So
no, I don't know.
What are we? So, Josiah, you have to act surprised. Chris,
I'm going to
be surprised. But if ending on an African telling a missionary that Europeans track a famine like a sky full of vultures, the reference to Africa is prescient because we are going to be reading How Europe Underdeveloped Africa by Rodney.
Yes! Oh, yeah, I want to read that book. Hell yeah.
All
right.
Well, so I just want to read the little blurb on the back.
Okay. Yeah.
How Europe Underdeveloped Africa is an ambitious masterwork of political economy detailing the impact of slavery and colonialism on the history of international capitalism. In this classic book, Rodney makes the unflinching case that African poverty is not a natural feature of geography or a consequence of culture, but a direct product of imperial extraction from the continent, a practice that continues into the present. Meticulously researched, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa remains an unshakably relevant study of the so-called Great Divergence between Africa and Europe, just as it remains a prescient resource for grasping the surge in global inequality today. In our edition, Angela Davis actually provides a foreword, which I
hell
think
yeah.
will
Hot
be
damn.
kind of interesting. And in case you needed, it does have a problematic blurb. This person said this book is a legendary classic that galvanized freedom fighters around the world, and that was a blurb given by the author of Race Matters, Cornell West. So
No, let's be clear. It's only become problematic in the last few years.
like the last month or so, like the last couple months, like. But anyway,
that is a really, really good companion with this book, though.
I agree.
I think so.
That's
why I chose that.
That's a great fucking choice, Jake.
Well, I think both of the books we've talked about for the book club thus far were written around the turn of the millennium, right? Because I think Basque History of the World was around the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so this one's going to be interesting because I think we should devote a little bit of time when we get to it to a bit of the legacy, because this is a book that was written in 1972. So we've got about 50 years to talk about of how this book mattered later on. So keep that in the back of your guys' head. But any last thoughts about late Victorian Holocausts?
There's a really, really bad, in my opinion, song called Late Victorian Holocausts that everyone should listen to if you get a chance.
Wait, is that the Nick
Cave thing?
Yes, Nick Cave wrote it, and it's sung by Marianne Faithfull.
Goodness gracious! It's Nicholas.
It's just
I love Nick Cave.
Me too.
And it's like this ballad about this ballad about this kind of drug filled era of club singers in England or in London. I'm pretty sure. I don't remember. I don't really care because it's not a good song. But it did get best new track from Pitchfork, so that just reinforces my opinion that it's not good. But it's this kind of meandering.
Yeah, that's a
track.
pretty.
It has this kind of meandering singing about this era, and then randomly she just pops out with it was a late Victorian Holocaust, and I'm pretty sure what happened was Nick Cave just read this book and was like, that's a pretty cool title. We should probably throw that in there. But yeah, there's that. Oh, I wanted to mention that there was a critique from a UChicago writer. And the critique was, I think I mentioned this previously to y'all, that actually it wasn't capitalism that did this. It was colonialism. It was the authoritarian colonial government that did this.
Right, of course.
Shit, we didn't even talk about this. And what's the difference?
My brother in Christ, they're the same picture.
After Jake had read that, he was sending our group chat gifs of Lenin.
Yeah, I also just want to correct your pronunciation. It's GIFs.
No, it's GIFs. It's GIFs.
Actually, it's not peanut butter. But
we're not starting this.
Nope, I agree with Josiah. It's a GIF.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
I hate democracy. As a committed social democrat, I hate democracy. What was I going to say? So I did want to note that, I just want to really, really be clear that colonialism is just capitalism, and all this stuff about actually they were being inefficient because they weren't making the most rational market decision. It's That doesn't matter, because remember that capitalism isn't just markets. Everyone thinks that capitalism is when free markets. That's not true. Capitalism is private property and the employer-employee wage relationship.
Mhm.
Like that's what we. That's
Yeah.
uh, uh,
And
uh,
and
it's not.
all of the prejudices that come with that.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
coercive
Yep.
issues
Yep. Yep.
and all that stuff that goes with it. I just want to be very clear about that. That all this stuff about like, well, the market wasn't free enough. First of all, there's no such thing as a free market. Read that
Yep.
by David Graeber. Uh, uh,
But
I can't stop. I can't stop myself.
but also, they throughout this whole thing kept trying to approach this as going, well, let's make the market freer. Let's make it freer.
Yeah,
And then they kept
no,
killing
they
people.
literally did.
And they killed 60 million people.
And the review was like, oh, well, the Indians weren't free. They were clearly not free because they had to, they were under the thumb of this colonial government. What? Like, what
Wait,
are you, who,
Whose
who's
colonial
making that
government?
decision? Who's colonial government? The people that are trying to make the market free, the people that are doing free markets. I
Who's
it made me very
whose
upset. I was like,
colonial
this is
government? Whose
literally,
market?
dude,
Who's
whose
what the
market is
fuck
it
are you?
anyway?
God
Look, I have to
damn.
say,
Well,
look. Here's my thing. I'll end with this: is that everyone involved with U Chicago economics, except for that one Marshall, I can't remember his last name,
Marshall
economist on
Steinbaum,
Twitter.
he's at Utah. He's
Yes,
at Utah now.
yeah, he's
oh,
cool.
he's out
He's
of U
cool.
Chicago. Okay.
Except for
Yeah,
him
he's
and
not. Yeah.
Bernie Sanders, because Bernie Sanders went to U Chicago, even though he wasn't part of the economics
Uh,
department. Except for those two people, they can all take an extended Siberian vacation. That's all I have to say.
Thermobaric on U Chicago.
oh man,
In
that is
Minecraft. In Minecraft.
if we do shock doctrine at some point, I know that's one I think we've all read, but if we want to do it, that would be a blast. We could really talk about how bad U Chicago
a
is.
blast.
Well, I think that does it. Last episode, Chris and I wrapped it up by saying "fuck the French," and I think
Fuck
it
the
would be
French.
fitting. I think it would be fitting to end today's episode with "fuck the British."
Here we go.
100%.
1, 2, 3.
Fuck
Fuck
the
the British.
Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to Fruitless, a podcast brought to you by our loyal patrons, who include Elizabeth Power, The Worst of All Possible Worlds, Moss, Kyle Gannis, Thomas C., James R., Leo Dickinson, and, of course, Chris Barker. I really appreciate your financial contributions. They really help this show grow and become sustainable. If you like what you heard today, there is more. There's bonus content available for these patrons that you can find at patreon.com. There should be a link to our Patreon specifically in the show notes. And, if you're not willing to commit just that much yet, another option is maybe just leaving us a positive review on Apple Podcasts. It helps with the algorithm. It helps us get noticed more. So I would appreciate that. Aside from that, follow anyone involved with the show on social media. All that's in the show notes. And enjoy the rest of your day. And don't forget to join us next month for How Europe Underdeveloped Africa by Walter Rodney.